Two of them are here with us today, so we have David and Hannah here with us. Their oldest daughter, Sarah, is back in Texas where she goes to Sam Houston University, so go Bearcats. And y'all, again, thanks for coming. We have some food, and so Alan's going to talk for a little bit, and then we have some Q&A. Now, we are live streaming this, so if you have a question, please raise your hand, and we'll bring a mic around so that everybody can hear the question. All right? Sound good? All right, thanks, y'all. Alan?
Test, okay. Thank you all so very much for your hospitality and your generosity. And as I had an opportunity with the seniors a few minutes ago, as I told them, I've never seen a more smiling bunch than this. This is very wonderful. It's very warm and very welcoming. I want to thank you all so very much. And before I get started, I love to give the Lord. The Lord needs no invitation. He's in charge. But out of a sign of respect, you'll hear me frequently say from time to time, we invite you here, which means we want you here with us, and that what we're doing would be about Him. And I want to give this time over to Him, and everything that we do this weekend and even tomorrow, I want to give it all over to Him. So before I get started and share a little bit about me and my family and how I came to be here, let's go to the Lord in prayer. Would you join me, please? Father, we are humbled to be yours, and we are thankful to be yours. It is a privilege to be your servant. And Father, where we would serve you and we would tell others about you. And Father, that through our lives and through the change in our lives because of the gospel, people would be attracted to that, and they would want that, and their lives would change. They would let go of their life without you and embrace you, and they'd give themselves over to you. And so, Father, I thank you for that privilege of serving you these many years. Father, I thank you for the privilege of coming here to Cary, to Good Hope Baptist Church, and meeting so many wonderful people. And Father, hearing a very similar story of wanting to reach this community and make Christ known in this community, and being a church of prayer. Father, thank you for that. That is certainly instilled deep in your people here. And Father, I humbly ask that everything that I say and do is done without error. It is to glorify you. And Father, we give you all the glory. And in the precious name of Jesus it is we pray. Amen. Okay. So, who is Alan McClure? Alan was born in a town of Baytown, Texas in 1966. And when I was age 10, my family moved out into the country, the same community that my future wife had lived in. I didn't know her at the time. And we cleared land and we went to high school there, and did not know the Lord. I was not saved until later. But I graduated from high school in 1984, and it was some of you will recall, it was a different world back then. Back then, there was a thing called the Cold War that was going on. The Soviet Union was the great Satan, as President Reagan called them. I felt that it was my job to serve my country. I didn't look down on anybody that didn't. I didn't think that I was any better than anybody else. I wasn't running from anything. I just felt that that's what I was supposed to do. And so I joined the Marine Corps and left in January of '85. And I feel that the Lord was in that process because there were people in my path that the Lord had surrounded me by, that had, even before I came to know Him, that I was groomed by, that helped me into what I'm doing today. And so I left, and my mom thought that I was only leaving for 4 years. I moved back to Texas after 27 years with a wife and 3 kids. So it's a little bit different than what Mom thought, a little bit different than what I thought. I didn't know what life held. So I joined the military, and I went many places. And I was going to get out of the military. I wanted to go to Texas A&M and be a veterinarian. I wanted to go into veterinary medicine. The Lord didn't open that door, and I'm thankful that He didn't. And I stayed in, and then I transitioned to a job where I was predominantly, I flew all the time as a flight engineer, and had a very high attrition rate. It was a very, very demanding thing, and I made it through, and I'm thankful that I did. And about the time that I was ending that training program, I was getting ready to leave, my mom and my future mother-in-law took painting classes together. And so between my mother asking for a phone number for her son, I ended up meeting a young lady that lived in the community. Her name was Pamela Faye White. And so we talked on the phone and a few things like that. And then I met her on my way to California. And we spent a lot of time together. And then right before I went to Desert Storm, we got engaged. And I came back from that, and then we were married in August of 91, so this year will be 31 years. And my wife had known the Lord, had been saved, but, she married me, and biblically speaking, that was not the most right thing to do. But I'm so thankful that the Lord saw fit to bring us together, because my wife I would watch her, she would instill in me, she's about doing the right thing for the right reason, even when no one's looking. And so my wife was grooming me. And then when I was facing a crisis of belief, as Henry Blackaby describes it, there was a gentleman that I worked with in the Marine Corps. His name was Andre Thompson. And if you ever saw Michael Jordan, he was a mini Michael Jordan. He looked just like Michael Jordan. And he led me to the Lord, and there was radical change. Because having come out of the Middle East and come out of Somalia, I was a hard Marine. I was that. And the Lord changed me radically. It was an overnight transformation. And I saw things differently. I could communicate differently. I could talk differently. And the things that I was interested in radically changed. So I would watch preaching on TV that I never had an interest in that at all. All of a sudden I had an interest in it. And I didn't understand the word, but I would try to read it and I'd try to understand it. So the Lord was doing all these things in my life. And so I was there in California, flew all over the world. And then we had an opportunity. Our first child was on her way. We didn't know it was a her at the time. And an opportunity came up to go to North Carolina in Cherry Point, where I would be home more. I'd still be doing what I'm doing, but I was in a unit where I would be teaching in a schoolhouse and flying a whole lot less. And so we talked about it, and we took that opportunity. And so we went there to Cherry Point in 98, and we moved in on the military base for a couple of years. And we met some very good friends, and things were very good. And something Pam and I had talked about, if some of you are aware of the Naval Flight Demonstration Team, the Blue Angels, the transport aircraft that they utilize is an all-Marine crew, C-130. So the guys that crew that thing are men that I had flown with and all over the world. So the opportunity came for me to apply for that. And it came down to me and one other individual. That other individual had just transferred to Japan, and the military isn't about moving someone and then moving them back. So I applied, and they'd looked through all the resumes, and it was really down to me and this other gentleman. Really, it was me, because the Marine Corps didn't want to pay for another move from overseas. And so I went down to South Carolina, and I toured with the Blue Angels. And a wonderful team, wonderful men that served their country. But I realized that wasn't for me. That was not for a man that God had a different trajectory on. And so it was not a difficult decision. I turned that down that evening and refused to pursue that. And so there are opportunities in our lives that seem very wonderful. And you're thinking, my gosh, how many people would just vie to get there into that? Well, ladies and gentlemen, that doesn't really matter for anything. The only one that you need to make sure that's in it's the Lord. And if He wasn't in me being there, then I didn't need to be there. And so I turned that down, and I was so thankful that I did. And then a little while later, I started sensing the Lord was moving in my life. I was wanting to pursue a career in the aerospace industry. I'd worked on aircraft for 20 years, flown for 18 of the 20 years, and had moved up the ranks, had been involved in a lot of things. And so naturally, it would look like a career in the aerospace industry was in my future. The Lord had other plans. And He started changing things in my life. And I started sensing some things that I had a crisis of belief. I would be there in the sanctuary, and I'd look, and my wife didn't fully understand at this time what was going on with me. I'd look around and I'd say, nobody understands the pressure that I'm under. Nobody understands this. And the pastor would be preaching, a man that I dearly, dearly respect, would be preaching, and I looked around and I knew what the Lord was doing, and I just wouldn't make that step, and I'd look around, I go, nobody understands what I'm going through. And so finally, after resisting the Lord for about 14 months, I came home one day from work, and Pam was cooking supper. I said, honey, we got to go talk. You know, when your husband walks in, and all of a sudden, we need to go and have a conversation. Oh, okay. And so I sat in the living room of our house. We were on the base there. And I told her what was going on. And then she said that whatever the Lord has called you to do, I will support you in that. The anxiety immediately went away. And I went a couple of days later and shared with my pastor. And he says, yep, you've been bit, Alan. You've been bit by the bug. And he said, everything that you're describing, I understand it so well. So a few months later, I went before the church and shared my testimony with the church. And there was, and I wasn't moving. I was still in the Marine Corps. Wasn't going anywhere, but there was an enormous affirmation of that. The church service lasted about an hour. It was a 2-hour service because people were standing in line to come and talk with me on that. So there was an affirmation from the congregation. Simply all that I had shared. I wasn't coming on staff there. I wasn't doing anything at that time there, but the people, there was an immense affirmation. And then a short while later, they asked me to serve as a deacon. And I hadn't shared anything with anybody other than the pastor. And so as I shared with some of the deacons earlier today, I went to my first deacons meeting, and I was afraid of those men. Those were spiritual giants, and I was just 35. And I had been all over the world and had done many different things. And I'm in the room with these men, and those men welcomed me and were thankful. These older gentlemen were thankful that the Lord was bringing younger men to serve on that team. And I learned immensely from those men. I'm so thankful for those men in my life. And then it was coming time to finish out my career in the Marine Corps. And I didn't know what I wanted to do. I had a desire in my heart to go to New Orleans Baptist Theological Seminary and pursue a Master of Divinity in expository preaching. The Lord didn't open that door. And my pastor told me, he says, Alan, I can teach you more about leading a church here than they can in that seminary. He goes, I went to that seminary, and I got my degree. They're a good seminary. He goes, but this is where the rubber meets the road. If you stick with me, I will teach you more about leading a church than they can. And I had to take him at faith, and he was correct. And so, but I still had that desire in my heart to go to seminary. And so one day, I told Pam that, I'm wrestling with this. And so I went out in the front yard, and the Lord and I just poured my heart out to the Lord. It was dark, and it was cool in the evening. And I poured my heart out to the Lord, and the Lord told me to stay where I was. I'll never forget it. Did I hear an audible voice? Absolutely not. But the Lord was moving, and I was supposed to stay there. But Alan wanted to go to New Orleans, and he wanted to go to seminary. Well, if Alan would have listened to Alan would have been in New Orleans when Katrina came through. And so then Alan and his wife, here I am. Now, this is a real good introduction for your family into ministry. You just retired from something where there's stability, and now you're being run off by a hurricane. And if we'd have left and would have probably gone to the Houston area, it was about 6 weeks or 8 weeks later, Hurricane Rita came through, and we'd have been double refugees, if you will, if I would have listened to Alan. But I listened to a gentleman named Dr. Stephen Cobb, and I'm so thankful that I stayed there and I allowed him to pour into me all those years. And he had shared with the church that someday I would be leaving. I mean, when he introduced me to the church, when we did the ordination, he shared with me someday that I would be leaving. And so he poured into me a vast amount, an immense amount. And then during all that time, we had our first daughter, Sarah, born in California, but all she remembered was North Carolina. And then our younger two children that are here with us, David and Hannah, that were born there in North Carolina. And that's all that they knew until we relocated to Texas about 11 years ago. And there was some great things that happened in the church that I was at in Waller, Texas, and the church that I'm at presently in Brenham, Texas. Some very wonderful things. There's some incredible ministry opportunities. I've seen the Lord break through some very hard hearts and rescue some marriages that were in the pit. And as wonderful as those things are, and a person could sit and could ride that for quite a while, that's not been me. And through many discussions, our family has longed to come back to North Carolina, and not necessarily New Bern where we had lived, but just this area. I've had my eye on it. We've talked about it for quite some time. And then about 3 years ago, Good Hope Baptist Church posted that you were looking for a pastor. And so I applied and was in the conversations with the search team for just a little bit, and then I saw that you had gone with an interim pastor. Well, I am so thankful. Well, let me rephrase this. The timing of things was not right for me, because soon after all of that was going on, there were some health issues in our family that we had to work through. And then in November 30th of 2020, I got COVID like you read about, okay? And it was real bad. And I don't think I was ever in fear of death. My oxygen level went down to about 84% one time. But it was real bad, and it stayed with me for a long time. So the timing of things just wasn't right. But with all of that going on, all that what you could call chaos in our life, it's just life, okay? It's nothing that we did to ourselves. It's just the ebb and flow of life. When I saw that you'd gone with an interim pastor, I kept my eye on Good Hope. And so as I kept watching what was going on. And so I would dig a little further in the stuff, and I would see what the church was doing. That you didn't have a full-time pastor. I went back and I saw that there was still some construction that was being completed. I saw the children's pastor, and then he would be preaching, and I'd see a little bit, at times, and I would see the student and the sports pastor preaching from time to time, and see all these things. And then I saw that you have people playing basketball in here on Saturday, and then you're ready for church on Sunday, and then you have a body of elders, which I believe is the absolute most biblical model, because that's what God calls for in His Word. I respected that. And I saw your constitution and your bylaws, and I read that meticulously, and I go, okay, that's a church that I feel that we can partner together. And so many things at first appeared that this would be a place that I might want to come to. And I didn't have any resumes anywhere in the world, in the system. They didn't exist. And then when you posted the job, I didn't immediately reply. I waited for about 3 weeks, and then I told my wife, and then I submitted, and then I got some emails back, and then I started talking with the search team. And again, I'm in a church. I don't want to say I've got an easy job, but I'm not where I feel that the Lord wants me to stay. I was there for a very, very specific purpose. The lead pastor had some health issues. He had gone in for a heart cath. They stopped. He says, you don't need a triple or a quadruple, whatever 5 is. You need one of them, and we're going to do it in the morning. And so he was only able to do 4 of the 5. But we didn't know if he's going to come out of surgery. And so I met with him, and then I started preaching, and then 2 weeks later I had shut the church down due to COVID. And so I was there at that church for a very specific purpose, for a very specific time. And what he and his wife both have said. And I was able to help them there and do that. But I've always had my heart on here, if you could say. In a general location, we like the North Carolina, but I wanted to see where the Lord was leading and where we would go. And so then I submitted my resume and began talking with the search team. And there was still a lot I needed to learn about the church. There still is. But there were some non-negotiables in that for me. Not that the church is unbiblical. It's just that these are things that I am not going to be the best fit in that situation. And so I needed to make sure that those things that I am, not that something can't challenge me to grow, but it's just things, these are the things that yes, I can be a part of that, and within a team can be effective, at least in how I perceive my unique DNA and personality. And so I saw all that. And then as I started talking with the team and all that, all those things that I had questions on began popping up. There's a lot of things I did not have to ask about. And that is unique in that normally the pastor has to ask the questions. I didn't have to ask the questions. God brought them to the surface without me pursuing those questions. And so when I was there with the search team and they would ask questions, I go, okay, that's a check mark off that I needed to hear, without telling them, of course. And then a few days later, Brenda sent me an email, and I just laughed. And the reason I laughed is because I wanted to be careful asking questions, not knowing where the church stood on some of these issues. But she sent me the email, and you gave me the opportunity to answer them in a way that I felt that my heart most wanted to answer them, not in a sense of arrogance, but in a sense that I can tell you how passionate I am about some of these things, because the world is getting ever and ever more aligned with Team Satan. It is. It is worse than it's ever been. And it's not, I don't think it's going to get any better until the Lord returns, globally speaking. So as these questions were coming and I was able to answer them, in my mind, I said, I hope I don't answer them too harshly. But I have to be honest with who I am. I was not willing to compromise on the answer of those questions to win somebody's favor, because honesty and being transparent is important. So I answered those questions, and I was very thankful that as I heard later, that some of the things that the search team was looking for, though I did not fully know, I just wanted to be myself. And then we went that, and then I was able to meet with the elders and Andrew and Roger, and we had conversations, and more questions came out, the things that I needed. And so I give the Lord the glory in that. The things that, how He had equipped me, they were coming to the surface. So I went back and I shared with the church that I'm at, and we shared that one Sunday morning. And I'm going to be baptizing some people on Easter Sunday. Our church does a big Easter Sunday outdoor baptism, and so people are still wanting to see me, and they know what's happening. But when I shared with the church I'm presently at, the thing that kept coming out over and over and over is that it does not surprise me that this is happening, and it does not surprise me where it is happening. Because as in my early formative years there in New Bern, I was groomed immensely. So in every other word, it seems like, in my vocabulary for the past 10 years, I would say, well, where I was at in North Carolina, this was effective, and we did that. And so people kept hearing that over and over and over. And when we would come back here on vacation in this area, we just loved the area. But still, The area is not all that there is. It has to be the church. Just so happens the church of the things that I was looking for happens to be in an area that I like and that my family likes. So all through this process, our parents, my parents are both going to be 80 this month. My father-in-law who's 80, mother-in-law who's 73. I've got a son that I'm going to be leaving a daughter for a short amount of time. We've equipped her to get us down on our 2 feet. And I have a son that graduated high school last year and a daughter that's going to graduate from high school next year. Folks, that's not an easy decision. I had better make certain the Lord's in that, or I am not taking care of my family. And in talking with my family and all that, we feel that this is where the Lord is leading us. And what's interesting is the first time I came here to talk with the search team, I didn't tell the kids where I was going. Pam knew. I didn't tell the kids where I was going. You know, Dad's not always intelligent. Dads aren't always that smart. And kids have use of all the technology. And so both of my kids were able to see that I was in North Carolina, and I was on church business, and they wanted to know, where is Dad? And so she had to tell them that evening when I was meeting with the search team. So as I was meeting with the search team, my wife was discussing with our kids where I'm at, and they were both excited. And so then when Kent had sent me the email that the search team had narrowed in on me, we told the kids, and we sat them down at the table. And we kept saying, you know, we're just going to have to see, we're going to have to see. And when I finally told the children, they're grown, of course, my kids, they were immensely excited. And so my family we're very, very thankful for all that you have done. And so we're here, as I'm going to share tomorrow. It is our prayer that you would prayerfully consider if we would partner together to win some for Christ in this community, if not more and more and more, and grow the believer here. And that's kind of an overview, but I also have a desire to work with those folks that are here in leadership. I have talked with some of the staff. I've Zoomed with some of the staff, and I've met the elders, and then today met some of the other leaders. And I haven't run across a thing that doesn't make me smile. I am so thankful for your generosity and your hospitality and your excitement on us coming here and meeting with you. So that's kind of how we got here. Now, for me, theologically, I wanted to go to Southwestern Seminary, but at the time, distance education wasn't a thing that it is now, and I couldn't justify driving that distance to go to Southeastern Seminary. And so I started going to Gordon Conwell Theological Seminary in Charlotte, and very much enjoyed that, and it was easy. Then we moved to Texas. I couldn't continue, and I wanted to go to Southwestern Seminary in Houston, but the highway between Houston and Brenham, where we live, was under massive expansion, and so driving there was not going to be an easy thing. And so I couldn't go there. I couldn't go to Dallas Theological Seminary. Houston Baptist University was not going to fit for what I was doing. So I pursued everything I could, and then I finally decided to go to Knox Theological Seminary in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, and I feel like I have learned so much from them. That's not to say that everything that every teacher is ever going to say that I agree with 100%, but in the way that it's explained, but I can say that I have been groomed and I have grown from being in a very diverse audience going through school. I'm very thankful for that. And then it is my desire, my intention, my aspiration, and my commitment that by September I'll have finished my doctorate of ministry. That's been a long undertaking, especially dealing with COVID. I want to have that done, and behind me, I feel like I'll finally get my get out of jail card free from Monopoly when I've graduated from that, because that weight of that on you is quite a bit. And so all these things coming together, and then me coming here, my family and I are very excited, and we're very thankful, and we're very appreciative of all that you have done for us and all that time. Did I miss anything, honey? You notice who I check with. Okay. So with that, I would love to, at this time, if you have some questions, I would love to answer some of those questions and share with you, give you a pretty full answer on why or how I do those things or those things. So if somebody has a question, I think Kent said there were some microphones in the audience. Did you have those? Or are you going to do that? Okay. So if somebody has a question, if you'll raise your hand, he's going to bring you the microphone, and then I will answer that. So there we go.
Thanks, Kent. I'm Karen.
Karen.
McClure. I would just like to know, you said you had some questions that you didn't want to bring up to the search committee, but they volunteered those topics. If you could just share those topics.
Yes. The culture is getting very politicized. And I think some churches spend way too much time on politics and not the king. And I wanted to make sure that Good Hope wasn't one of those churches, that you weren't caught up in politics. And another thing that I wanted to make sure is that you did not get caught up in Southern Baptist Convention politics to the point that that's all that you could think of, okay? That's important to me. Now, I love what the Southern Baptist Convention has done. It's not perfect. It's made up of imperfect people. But those are a couple of areas that I wanted to make sure that that I wasn't going to have to come here and talk politics. I wanted to talk Christ. And those were a couple of areas that were there. Another thing is some churches they worship a translation of the Bible, and I wasn't going to fit well there, okay? Because if I go and talk to kids in the school, I might use the ICB, the International Children's Bible. Or if I'm speaking to very young teenagers, I may use the New Living Translation. On Sunday, I'll be preaching for the first time out of this Bible, which is an English Standard that was given to me by my pastor that's in heaven at the moment, forever. Okay, let me just rephrase that. And so those are some things that I just wanted to make sure that they weren't going to be a good fit for me as a person. So I just want to make sure of those. Thank you. It has to be a fit, because if it's not, we're wasting each other's time. Yes, somebody in the back.
Pastor, my name is Bruce.
Yes, sir.
You say that you want to preach Christ, talk Christ. Do you ever have a sermon to warn the people against the journeys of the devil?
Yes. To warn the people of the what of the devil? Journeys. The journeys of the devil. Yes. Let me make sure I understand that correctly. In other words, warn the people about the schemes of the enemy?
That's good. Yeah. In Job.
Yes, sir.
God asked the devil where he came from, wandering the earth to and from, up and down.
Yeah.
Do you have sermons about the devil and his power on earth and how he tempts
Yes. Okay.
us as God's servants?
Yes, sir. Absolutely. So I reference all the time that the accuser, Satan, is of course accusing us before the Father, but that his legion, his army, if you will, is stirring things up down here, and they're quite effective. I also spoke that I'm a big proponent of truth, absolute truth without any mixture of error. And so I have preached a sermon that's today. This was probably about 2.5 years ago, and I was dealing, and the subject was truth. And so I was. There were a couple of things. I was talking about your past doesn't dictate your future, and I showed an illustration of some individuals that have gone the way of the world, because that's what the world tells you, that this is what is good and right according to the world's eyes, as opposed to what's good and right in the eyes of God. And so I said, your past doesn't dictate your future. And I says, and all of that is a lie. So then I transitioned into, what is a lie? I wasn't trying to cause a fight, but I was not going to back away from truth. And so then I went to John 8:44, where Scripture says that Satan is the father of lies. And I'm not a name dropper, and I'm not a bully of denominations or anything like that. I don't think that serves a purpose. Okay, because there's going to be a whole lot of people other than Southern Baptist in heaven. A whole lot of people, okay? But I did make the statement that if whatever it is that you follow, that the world will tell you that's okay, but whatever it is that you follow is not grounded in this truth. I go, it's not of the Lord, therefore it is a lie, and therefore Satan has its author. So I stood in that pulpit, so probably about 3 years ago, and I said that Islam, the author of Islam and the object of Islam is Satan. And nobody gave me any grief, because I again built up to that case. So yes, I will speak truth. I don't try to start a fight, but I won't back away from the truth. But I led up to that, how the enemy, the schemes of the enemy are terrible, and that the only hope that we have is here. And this clearly explains who Jesus Christ is and how we can have a relationship with Him. So when I seek to explain the schemes of the enemy, I want to provide the outlet out of that life, which is life in Jesus Christ. So I hope I answered your question, sir. Thank you. Yes, sir.
Hi, I'm John.
John?
As you obviously know, we're an elder-led church.
Yes, sir.
And I just wonder if you've had experience working in an elder-led church and if you are comfortable coming into an elder-led church.
Yes, sir. I've been an elder for 5.5 years. And at the church that I'm at, in addition to the elder and the associate pastor, I'm the church clerk. So for all the legal documents or the things that the elders there are the trustees. We're the trustees. Okay? And so anything that needs a legal signature, I do that as a member, as a representative of the elder body. And so I wholeheartedly believe in an elder body because it's a plurality of committed followers that need to be proactive and not only reactive. There's times you need to react to things, but that you have a team that then works with other teams, so that you make certain that you're hearing clearly from the Lord amongst His people. And elders are the best vehicle to do that. Yes, sir. Thank you. Yes. Okay, a couple of. Raise your hand again. Okay, yes.
Hi, I'm Brad.
Brad.
And apparently our row is obligated to ask questions.
That's okay. Okay, y'all don't get any more because that's, no, I'm just kidding.
Two quick questions.
Yes, sir.
One, do you lean more expositional in your preaching or topical? And then the follow-up question would be, what are some authors or books that have most influenced you?
Okay. I'm generally more expositional. Now, there will be times that I will do topical. It's for a specific thing. For instance, one year, it was topical, but it was called the post-resurrection appearances of Christ. So following Easter, we did a 4-week series on every time Christ appeared in the Scriptures. That's a topical. I wasn't going all the way through, say, the book of John or Luke or something like that. But as a general rule, I prefer to go through, say, like the book of Jonah, and then dissect that so that we can see the attitude of a prophet, and God got the last word in the book of Jonah, and so I try to bring that out into the audience where I'm at. Now, there will be times that it will be topical. Maybe we're doing let's suppose that would enter into a capital stewardship campaign for paying off debt or something like that. That would be topical because I would hit certain topics. But in that topical preaching, I would preach expositionally those topics. So it just kind of depends on the thing. And what was the other question? I'm sorry. Okay, authors or books. Okay, well, first of all, I'll start with the Bible, okay? I like to understand the Jewish culture in that. There are some books out there that commentators or authors that I read, and they're from a very wide audience. For biblical exposition and communication, I like to read Haddon Robinson, Dr. Haddon Robinson. He is a master of communication, and so I like to listen and read him, though he is with the Lord. There are leadership books out there of various authors, and some of the principles of Dave Ramsey, though I know that he has come under some scrutiny of recent. Another individual that was a very clear biblical communicator in how to dialogue with individuals, but he has also come under scrutiny, was Ravi Zacharias. Now, I wasn't there when he was doing any of that stuff that they claimed that he did, but yet in what he was communicating about how to answer the culture was spot on. So something like that, I have to eat the fish and spit out the bones in a situation like that. I appreciate Dr. John MacArthur in some areas because I feel like he will do his homework and give you a biblical answer. I disagree with him sometimes being I sometimes disagree with him being a bully. Okay? I do not like it when he criticizes other pastors that he may not fully be aware of. Now, John MacArthur is a whole lot smarter than me, so I can't critique him in that, but I don't conduct myself in those ways. R.C. Sproul was another one. He would take a difficult subject and make it easy to understand. And so he had writings that he would have. I like to read the late Vance Havner and some of his quotes and how to illustrate things. Charles Stanley is another reader that I would read. Charles Stanley writes at a very easy level so that I can take it and communicate it to others. One of the greatest books I ever read was by Dr. Charles Stanley on how to handle adversity. And it dealt with not only looking at your life in the immediate, but looking at it from a broader perspective. And he helped me, that book helped me when my wife and I planted a single mom's Sunday school class. And we used that book to launch that class. So those are some of the writers that I have. I read a lot of things that are out of print because they were written in a different era and they're written differently. And so some of those things that aren't there. I like to read, I'm going to show my age here, folks, the old January Bible study from the Lifeway. Used to be Convention Press, and now it's Lifeway. I like to read the January Bible study. I'm just gleaning from those things. I like to read others' dissertations. Some guys that would write their PhDs on like God and time. There's one of my seminary professors, Tim Stansberry. He wrote a PhD on God and time, dealing with the sequence of time. So I like to read those things so I can, when I come to the text, I can get a person I respect, glean from their research. So another book that I have read, that I've read several times, is called The Arab-Israeli Wars. And it's written about how you see Israel as a brand new nation in 48 come to the nation they are today. And you look at what is going on in that land, and you can dissect it from a military standpoint. I dissected it from a God standpoint and saw how God preserved them through all of the oppression that they have faced. So I try to have a wide range. Okay. Luann, did you have a question? Yes. Yeah. Okay.
Hey, Alan.
Hello.
Only heard from you about 3 times.
Are you
today
Luann?
already. Yes.
Okay.
So I have two questions. The first one is, I know you said that this is the area you wanted to come to. Can you tell us the calling of God on your life to be here? Why you felt that you were called to be at Good Hope in
At
this
Good Hope,
area?
okay. So I was not determined to force my agenda on a location. That was not going to work. I was smart enough to know that that wasn't going to fit in his plan, although I had a personal preference. So we love the mountains and we love the beach and we love the culture. So naturally there was that desire. Okay, but if Good Hope was in say Alabama, I was not going to feel a loss because I wasn't in North Carolina. So, but I just because of that. Now Good Hope. When I saw everything that was going on at Good Hope, without a full-time pastor, and everything that you were doing, one of the things that hit me is that y'all had a prayer walk in the community. That was important to me. And then I saw the campus gives the impression that you love kids. You love children. When I see your playground back there, that makes a statement. You've got AstroTurf and you've got the coverings. Your church is making a statement that it values reaching children and following through and making them so they can come in here and play basketball and all that, that you have the intention of making them committed followers of Christ. That's important because, and then as I talked to another group, I looked at the website and I saw the pictures of your staff. I felt those were real pictures. I didn't feel like they were glamour shots. I felt that was real. Okay? And that is
I would prefer glamour
no,
shots.
but here's what I want to say. You looked real. And I value being real. I value that immensely. It's just real. And then when I looked at your bylaws and how you're structured as a church and all of those things, elder-led church, that was something that I was wanting to move. I didn't want to go to a non-elder-led Southern Baptist church. Okay, so that was one of the markers. And then I love on the last page of your bylaws, you have something you do with conflict resolution and how you deal with church discipline. So many churches today will not follow through on that. And church discipline and church accountability is a positive term. It's not negative. Okay, so the church lays out clearly how the process will flow when there is an issue in the church. Because if you don't deal with issues within the church, from a discipline standpoint, let's say that somebody's stirring up trouble. Okay, you have to stop that. Or if somebody's trying to introduce something that is not biblical, you have to have a way of stopping that. And so you're letting people know that when they join this church, that on the last page of your bylaws, we will humbly and lovingly protect the unity of the church. That's what that told me before I ever talked to anybody. And so those were things that were near and dear to my heart that I felt the Lord had put on my heart, and I wasn't finding them anywhere else. And so with that, every step of the way, again, I have a family that's at a stage of life that's very vital that, as I told the search team, I can't afford to mess this up. And every step of the way, I felt that the Lord was moving us deeper in that. And I asked multiple times, please reveal something to me if this is not where I'm supposed to be. Okay? I even drove around your cemetery when I came here to meet with the search team.
It's looking
Yes,
really good
yes.
now.
I wanted to see what was in your cemetery. I've been through some other cemeteries, and it's amazing what you will see in some cemeteries. Now, I'm not going to get into all those details, but I didn't see some things that I didn't want to be a part of. And so I'm thankful for that.
Okay, my second question. then.
Yes, ma'am.
I think I'm sure you've heard it from our pastor search team and our elders, and the people today, our heart for reaching the lost. And the blessing that we see as a church body, how God has continually and very abundantly poured the nations into this area. And that is truly our heart for reaching the lost. What kind of things have you done in the past
Okay.
and for reaching the lost, not just different nations, but just the lost? And what specifically do you have planned for Good Hope? What ideas specific do you have for us? Because we're ready to go.
Okay. So some of the things that I have been involved in is is a follow-up to the first time that a person attends your church. Okay, we can't assume that they're saved because they came to the church. So we wanted to follow up with them as soon as possible, and we would put a gift on their door if they didn't answer their door with some information. The person that dropped it off would sign it and leave their phone number so they could be reached. And so when we would encounter people, of course, that know the Lord or wanted to ask about the Lord, we connected them with those that were a part of that area if they wanted to know more about the church. So a great thing of winning someone to Christ is not letting go of them, because it's real easy to someone to visit your church and you let go of them. I can look online at a pair of shoes, and everything that I look at now online has got all these shoe advertisements all over Google and Facebook and all of that. It's because they're trying to follow up with me. A church needs to do the same, because they may come in about 3 or 4 times and they're testing us. They want to see if we're real and we're authentic, and we follow with them. So the commitment to the follow-up is important. The other thing is you have to, when you preach the word, you always have to let folks know that whatever is going on in their life, if they don't have Christ, that Christ is the first answer to what's going on in their life. They may be doing something to themselves, but they can't get ultimate help until they get the one that can ultimately help them. So you have to preach Christ crucified from the pulpit in a way that is not beating the pulpit, but in a way that says, I want to go to that one. I want to go to that lamb. So that has to happen. In your Sunday school classes, you have to be evangelistic. Your Sunday school classes need to be evangelizers. They're bringing people in. Because sometimes people will only come to Sunday school class, won't come to worship. Because I'll go where my friend is, but I'm not going in the big group. So the Sunday school class has to have a mind that I want to win souls for Christ. And so the church takes on the mindset. And so I have heard that from many, that y'all are ready to do that. So things that I have been involved in just dealing with the lost, would be being involved in the community in certain ways that we would have the opportunity to connect with people and invite them. We've done things in the community where we'd have about 100 children after school, and we would minister to them. It was an after-school program. We would teach them how to be a respectful young man or young woman, and speak intelligently to adults and respect adults, and teaching them how to respect authority, because authority's out the window in a lot of parts of our society. So it was teaching that. And then we would teach them about Christ, and we would ask them to share with their parents. And so we would have some of these parents come to us and say that my second grader, we started to eat the other day, and we've never prayed before a meal, but our second grade little boy stopped us and says, no, we have to pray before we eat. And so we got feedback through the parents that we're making inroads with those kids. And we had some kids come to Christ through that, and also a summer program. I've been involved in working with 4 different ethnic groups out of Burma. We had many salvations come out of that because we approached their condition. They were a refugee. They were coming to this country, and New Bern was one of the areas where they dropped them. So we took an approach in a model kind of like the Salvation Army does. If you take care of some physical needs, then you've won the right to be heard, and you share the gospel with them. And we saw some fruit come out of that. Sports is another thing. You have an open gym in here. I don't know how all that is conducted, but if you're bringing people on the campus, you have an opportunity to talk with them, and you plant a seed in that. And then as we see more of who's in our community, and those, if we have something for those ethnic groups in the community. Now, I'm just thinking out loud here, because in where I'm at in Texas, it's pretty, we don't have the nations there where I'm at. I'd have to talk with others. That's something that we could do that maybe would invite people on the campus with the intention of building relationships, connecting with people, to then lead them to Christ. And now we have a missionary out in that community bringing people here. Then we start a Sunday school class for them. So then they start going back in and telling more and more. So there's a lot of different things. But sharing Christ with our community has to happen. Let me put it to you this way. Let's suppose that there's a church that plants a church in, I don't know, Kenya. Because I've been involved in something like that. If they plant a church in Kenya, well, that church in Kenya was planted to reach those people in that community. That Kenyan church was not planted to reach people from a different country. They were planted to reach those people there. And so God has planted this church here, and He's brought people here. I think it's a clear indication that we need to be involved in reaching those right in our local community, and it really costs nothing to do that. So, with all that, I would need to know who is on the missions team and say, what are some things that you have done in the past? What are some things that have worked? What are some things that haven't worked? What are some things that you want to do? And hear from the people so that we can collect, so I can collect all that and go. Now, on the day one that I show up, and if you say that, Alan, we've got a team that's going to go out and minister to this community, I'm going to say, great, what time do I need to show up and where? I'm going to go right there with you. So I will be ready. So a lot of that is going, but I need to know the people that I'm working with. Because they need to, in a sense, I mean, they were going to go without me, but it's important that we have a trust with each other, that I can encourage them. So there's multiple things that you can do. Okay.
So my former neighbor, Roger Valacourse, a lot of people know him. He passed away last August. He was the CEO in a lot of big companies. And one question that my wife Brenda and we always talked with Roger about was going from a small country church 20 years ago and transitioning into a professional area church. Like Apple has a campus that's 2 miles from here.
Yes, sir.
What have you done in your experience to get us to where we're reaching those professional people in our communities, as well as people who've lived here their whole life, or as well as anybody coming here? Just give me your experience on how you would handle something like that, or what's in your thought process.
Okay. So in New Bern there, we were part of a church relocation where we went from, when we got there, it was probably about 650 people. I started going there in 99, came on staff in 2003. We relocated in 2006, and I left in 2011. When I left in 2011, we were running about 2,450 people on Sunday morning. So the church had astronomical growth, and I was able to be a part of that. So I was in the vicinity of other individuals as we were learning this together. So one of the things that's important is that a church needs to have this can sound derogatory, but it's not. It needs to have a fairly tight focus on what it's doing. Because there are a lot of good things that are out there, okay? You can start a private Christian school in your church, and that's a good thing if God's called you to do that. If He hadn't called you to do it, don't do it. It's going to suck all the resources out of your church, and it will take away from other things. So you have to have a fairly tight focus on, if Good Hope says that we want to be a people, a faith community, that is the passion on our heart is to reach these other ethnic groups that God has brought here, and we want to reach, perhaps, let's say, young families that are still fruitful and multiplying so that their children will grow up in this church, then that needs to be something that's talked about in all your Sunday school classes in all your meetings. That needs to be regurgitated over and over and over. And then in the sermon, so if let's say that we're, somewhere in Timothy, and Paul's mentoring Timothy, and we go through that and say, now one way that we can see the way that Paul worked it out with Timothy here at Good Hope Baptist Church is that we have a women's ministry that has taken up on itself to adopt some of the teenage young ladies in the church, and we're shepherding them to be more committed followers of Christ, and that they would in turn do that. So you have to have that commitment there. And so reaching out into the business world, as you had mentioned, I'm sure that we have people in the business world here, okay? And so we emphasize that you are a committed follower there, and you're talking and you're inviting. So that individual that would go out and invite, if we have things that are happening here, be a proactive inviter and invite them here, so that because if we can get them here, I have heard all day long how there are some people that are here, they didn't go to any other church because how they're treated in the parking lot, and how we loved on them when they came in the door. And so if we get that individual out of the corporate world or the technology world or from Apple or wherever, we bring them in and we love on them. And we just let them know that we're glad to have them here, and that it would be real and not the typical. They're going to be disappointed if we don't tell them we like them, because that's what you do in churches. But it needs to go much deeper than that. It needs to be real, and they need to see it. And so that's one way to reach a person who might be a skeptic. But it has to be intentional, and we don't just talk about it, but that we do it. So that has to be the corporate model of how we do things. And then if, let's say that you're working in a company, let's say you're working in Apple, and you've got a bunch of folks there that you talk with. Well, you and I can go one day meet them for lunch, and I will just introduce myself to them and just talk with them, because I know a little bit about Apple. I have an Apple computer. I can talk intelligently about Apple computers. And so I'm talking to them about what initially interests them, so that they get to see who I am. And then as I have opportunity, I share the gospel. So it's just a way of communicating. So I don't want to call it evangelism explosion, but we do need to, in our culture, teach people how to talk to people and share Christ. That's another way that we could just make sure that we do those things. But again, those are things that will work just about anywhere, that are transferable. We just need to do them. But I have had so many opportunities of things that we did that not in that area, but in children and youth. Now here's another thing too. If we can get their kids in church, think about this. If Andrew back there is taking care of their kids, their parents will put up with a lot. Okay? This might not be what they want to do. They might not like the music. They might not like anything else. But if their kids are being loved on by Andrew's team, or they got a teenager and Roger's out there showing them how to play basketball, and they're loving it, guess what? Those parents are going to come back. Because how do we market toys today? We don't market them to the parent. We market them to the kid. And the kid won't hush, and so the parent buys the kid the toy, okay? And so if we can minister to the kids, we're going to get the people. So there's just different ways of doing that. So I hope that answered your question. Okay. But being real. An executive that's led people, he's going to be able to tell if you're fake or not. And just be real. Yes.
Some churches support or sponsor international missionaries.
Yes.
How do you feel about that?
Okay.
And applying that to our church?
Okay. I think that that is very good and very wise. Okay. There are some churches that don't. I never visited there. I didn't apply there or anything like that, but I just happened to come across them. Their mission focus was their local community, and that's where they poured all their resources into their local community. They emphasized people go by from the farmer's market and interact with the people there. Okay, so that was the church that they were. Now, when it comes to international missions, I think that is important because there are places where the gospel has not been taken. if we do international missions, we need to do it right. For instance, coming there from the South in the United States and trying to tell them how to do church or do life is probably not the best model, but we work we understand the culture, and that when we can train leaders in that culture, because we can't stay there, we train leaders in that culture, and then we step back and stay in touch with those leaders through technology or letter writing or however, and then we encourage them, and then at the same time, okay? So if, say we do I don't know, I'm just going to pull it out of the sky, once a year update with our church in whatever country, we link up with them and we see them there. I know the time difference is there, but we try to develop a relationship with this church and that church so that they know that they're prayed for. Because if they're only seeing one person or hearing from one person, they don't know who we are. But when they hear who we are, then that. So, yes, I believe in it, but you have to make sure that you follow through. You're not just going for 2 weeks and then leaving, no relationship. Yes, sir.
Pastor, may I attempt one more question?
Yes, sir.
Do you believe that individuals are called to a church? And I'll give you an example. My wife and I moved here in 2007, and we passed the church a number of times on the street out here. And one Sunday we passed, and it's like we were drawn then to visit Good Hope. And that was what? A number of years ago.
Yes.
Okay? Understand the question? Does God draw people to a church? Thinking that if we could get numbers of people in the community on our campus, would God help us to do the work to get them in the church?
Yes, sir. I do believe that people are called. When I got saved, we were going to the military chapel, and then we started going to a non-denominational church right outside the gate. And it was a Sunday evening. And we started, and I leaned over at my wife. I go, "Why have we not been here?" And I felt that the Lord was drawing us there because, not that the military chapel wasn't good. I lived in the military every day of my life, and I wanted to engage in ministry that didn't have a military mindset, not a mindset, but they're talking about that all the time. I want to hear about other things. So we went to a little church out there, and I felt that the Lord was leading us there, and we stayed there until we left. And then I felt that the Lord was leading us to the Temple Baptist Church in New Bern, and that's where we went, and we joined the third Sunday. I felt that He drew me there. My wife was a big, how should I say, instigator of that. She was leading me in joining, as I had never joined a church before. So I felt like the Lord was leading me, and I also felt like He was leading me through my wife. And I went there because after I got there, if I hadn't have gone to Temple Baptist Church, I'm not sure where I would be. He brought me there and put me around people, and things immediately were happening. I didn't have to ask for it. It was just happening. So yes, I believe He will draw people to a church. He will call that. Now, I can't say that He does that to every individual. I can only speak for my own experience and what I've heard others saying. So yes, He does. Now in having the people come around you, okay, you're going to see tomorrow in the sermon that prior to Jesus' triumphal entry, there was a lot of times where He would perform a miracle and He told people, don't tell anybody about it. Don't go broadcasting it. But as He gets closer and closer to His triumphal entry, He is really broadcasting it. And He wanted the world in that culture to know who He was. And so it was more and more vocalized, if you will. Well, since He has paid the price on Calvary's cross and He has got up out of that grave, and then He has ascended, He left us here to continue to be ambassadors. And He wants us to reach people wherever it is that we go, to be that representative. So with that said, if we are committed I think God honors our commitment, and we reach many people. And more people are talking out in the community about how they were loved on. We will reach more people. Now, numbers aren't the litmus test of the effective ministry, but numbers can hold you accountable to, are you doing your job? Okay, they can hold you accountable. So, I do believe that as we have more opportunity, we get more people, there's more opportunities to involve things that would involve more people. We get them here, take care of their children, take care of their students, and love the adults. Who would not want to be a part of that? So it's a process. It involves the entire church. It's not just one area. But yes. You get another one, sir. Okay.
Okay. Do you prefer to be called Pastor McClure, Preacher McClure? And when you get your degree, will you become Dr. McClure
No,
to
sir.
us?
I had a title in the military, and that ended a long time ago. I've responded to a whole lot of different phrases in my life. Alan or Pastor, or one gentleman, his name was Donald Aber. He'd always call me Reverend. He was a sweet gentleman, and him and his wife were sweet. And so I'm not that formal. I'm not. And when I get my degree, I in no way prefer that anybody would call me anything different, because the degree is wonderful, but I didn't get it on my own. The Lord had to draw me in that direction. And I had to have people around me that would support me in that, and that I'd had the desire to do it, and the follow through to do it, and the time to do it. If all those things weren't there, I wouldn't be able to do it. And so I would just still prefer Alan. Just Alan. Simple. I've responded to "Hey you" and all kinds of things.
You're in the heart of ACC country. We need to know where you stand.
My football team came to Tennessee years ago, the Houston Oilers. So would it be Duke or UNC or State State? So as I told some people earlier, I've done a wedding for a couple that had attended NC State, and the reception was at on the campus, I guess in the student center, I don't know, and I saw the wolf standing there, whatever that is. You know, it's like it's going to get out and bite you. So I saw that. I've gone, my children's pediatrician was taught at Duke, and she is a wonderful woman. And then many of the people that I had served with in the area, in New Bern and all that, were North Carolina fans. Okay? So the only experience that I have, so you're trying to set me up and I ain't going to let you. Okay? I see what's going on. But the first time I ever heard of NC State is when I was in high school in Houston, Houston Cougars were going to win the national championship. And I think they had been predicted as the much better team, but I think NC State showed up to play ball, and they beat Houston. 82 or 83, I know I'm showing my age. I never forgot that, by the way. So, but my oldest daughter and I would go watch UNC and Duke football games because you can get a ticket for $10. And so long story, who should I root for? Help me out. Okay, all of them. So when I showed up in Waller, Texas, there were all these people that wanted me to go to the University of Texas or Texas A&M. So I was going to try to find a T-shirt right down the middle that showed both, but I couldn't get one of them. So I like them all. And I didn't pick this shirt just because it's UNC blue or Houston Oiler blue. It happened to fit. What happened is I'd bought it for an event, and it fit with my the suit that I was wearing. It fit. Okay. I'm digging a hole, I know. Can I give you the shovel back? Yes, ma'am.
Hello. Thank you. This is related to what you were talking about earlier with working on your doctorate or
Yes, ma'am.
all these different things you've done in your life. But it just got me to thinking that this church has a long history here. I was born overseas, but I lived in this local area most of my life. I've been here for 12 years. And within the last several years, there's just been a lot of turnover, somewhat unexpected. Pastors, we expected to stay a little longer for various reasons and such. And so, it's a big move for you. We've heard that you somehow found good hope and decided this is where you want to apply and stuff. But, from just the general perspective, if you come here, we've had pastors we wanted to come and be with us longer. And for whatever reason, they felt drawn elsewhere, or, it was sort of, I'd say in the last 6 or 7 years, perhaps, there was just a lot of change, more than a lot of people would like. So in terms of that context for yourself and your family and your vision for where you want to be 5, 10 years down the road, we had a pastor who got a PhD, and then next thing we know, he's leaving. And so it's kind of, it leaves people wondering what's happening sometimes.
Yes, and thank you for that question. I know that is a very passionate question. I was asked that by the search team, and I don't have an agenda to come here to go someplace else. I'll be 56. Not that my age dictates this, but I would like to make a home and plant roots, as my family has wanted to come back to this area. I can also say that please don't take this wrong, but there are a great number of churches I don't care to be a pastor of, because it wouldn't fit. I have no agenda or thought that I'm coming here to go someplace else. Maybe retirement. Okay? And as I told the search team, if I take care of myself, I've got several more years. But I have no agenda to try to use this as a stepping stone. If that was the case, I could have done that in Texas. That would have not been difficult. But this is where we want to be. Not to come here and buy a house and then put it on the market in a couple of years. No.
Is it your objective to look after all ages, from the cradle to old age? Be pastor for everybody at different levels of development?
Yes. Okay.
Is that your objective?
Yes, sir. So as I shared in a few of the meetings, we certainly need to reach the children today because the world is bombarding them with untruth. And the ones that have weathered through some of the things in the time, in the change before the Vietnam War, how the culture was rapidly changing there, and all of that. There's a lot of things that we don't teach in our schools today, historically speaking, and the recipients of that knowledge are the ones that have lived through it. And so it would be incumbent, and it would be prudent, and it would be biblical that all ages, whether they're a child or a homebound senior, would be ministered to. Now, does that mean that I can do each and every one? No. There may be some that are better suited in me in certain areas, but I need to be held accountable to make sure it happens, okay? There may be some places, let's say that, just hypothetically speaking, it is a homebound lady. She may love me and trust me, but her medical condition is such that She would just prefer a woman to come there. Okay? Then I need to text with her, email her, or find, or however it is I can communicate with her to make sure that that lady is being ministered to, even if I'm not the one that actually goes into the home or the facility. Yes, sir.
Hey, folks, we are about 15 minutes past our scheduled time. So if we have any final questions. The McClures have had a very long day, and I'd like to let them go home back to the hotel before tomorrow morning.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. So, before I came up here and spoke and talk about what happened in the bathroom, you'll know I'm real. I'm standing there in the mirror and I'm looking at myself and I think, Lord, what a huge responsibility. What a huge amount of trust, love, and care. And I am overwhelmed by your support. I don't take it lightly. I take it very humbly. And I feel like everything that has been poured into me from years ago, before I was saved, from people that surrounded me, to the time I was saved, to the time I was all through the military, and then after the military, and talking with biblical scholars that I will never attain their knowledge. I'm just a guy trying to be real, be a real follower of Christ, be a real husband, a real dad, and a real pastor, and surround myself with people that will help me and walk with me, because I do not possess every tool in the tool shed. But in the local church, in the body of Christ, all those tools are there. And it's at all ages. And it's important to surround yourself with folks and do life and do ministry. And one of the things that I had told one of the groups I met with, I don't try to preach to impress you. I'm probably never going to do that. I preach for life change. And I ask certain people in the audience. Sometimes I ask my children because they know me more than anybody. And I'll ask them, I says, was that easy to follow? Was my sermon that I preached, could you understand and follow with me? Because if it's easy to understand, whether it's the wow factor or whatever, that I'm not, but if it's easy to understand, and if I'm prayerfully go over what I'm going to preach, and it is always out of this word, then if a teenager can understand what I'm saying, then I think the majority of people can too. I strive for that accountability in my preaching, so that people, when they leave here on Sunday, they know a little bit more about this and how to live that in their lives. So I strive for that. And as I've had requests for discipleship studies, say elder discipleship studies that I have led, or other deacon discipleship studies, or Sunday school discipleship studies. I want to be amongst the people, helping putting a taste in their taste buds, if you will, for more of the Word of God, so that we're biblically astute, and then we go out and we share that with the world. And wherever it is that we go, we're biblical ambassadors wherever we go, local to global. And here, especially here in Cary, and I'm going to show how much I don't know, Carpenter and Morrisville and these little towns around here. There's all kinds of people out here that don't know the Lord. And there's a lot of people around here that were just like me at the age of 29, wouldn't be caught in a church. We just need someone to love on them and tell them. And so I want to be a part of that. I want to be a part of that. So I thank you all very, very much. And if there's no more, we'll still be standing around. I'd like to close in prayer, if I could. Okay. Well, Father, I thank you again for this opportunity, for the technology that is available for those that are watching, that can't be here, and that they are still apart. And Father, for those that are here at Good Hope, those that will be coming to Good Hope, Father, I just pray your hand of protection upon them. And Father, for the leadership here at this church, Father, in the years that the past couple of years, as the church has gone through some transition, and Father, you've called and equipped, and you have stood up leaders. That is no small feat. Only you could do that. But it takes leaders that are surrendered to you, that will listen to you and will be committed to the cause. So, Father, I thank you for the staff of this church. I thank you for the elders. I thank you for the deacons, and the various ministry leaders, the Sunday school teachers, the directors that would minister to men and minister to women, those that would love on children, and those that would love on those that are homebound, and the students and all of that. Father, I just pray your hand of protection upon them, and Father, that you would equip them wherever it is that they are, to be always ready to give an answer for the hope that they have, and they could answer questions. And Father, that this would be a church that would not be afraid to ask biblical questions, so that we can get biblical answers and live biblically. Father, have your way in all things, this evening and tomorrow. And we put it all in your hands. It's in the precious name of Jesus we pray. Amen. And ladies and gentlemen, thank you all so very much.